Okay. Well, thank you, PATV, for broadcasting our meeting this morning, and welcome to everyone. This is a meeting of the Welch School Building Committee, and this is a component of our MSBA project to renovate and repair the Welch Elementary School. I'm Bev Griffin Dunn. I'm the chair of the Welch School Building Committee, and what I'm going to do at the very beginning of this meeting, pursuant to Massachusetts laws, I'm just going to read out loud the names of the participants who are present today. We do have the capability to do public participation. However, today we won't be doing that. So folks, if you thought you could call in, we're not going to have that available. However, we hope you'll enjoy watching this presentation. And you can always contact me or any member of the committee if you'd like with any questions. My email is listed on the website for the Peabody Public Schools. So let's get started. First, I'd like to run through the names of everyone present. Today we have Mayor Ted Betancourt, we have Ed Colbert, Beth McGivern, we have Mike Burton from Doran Whittier, we have Dr. Chris Lord, Dan Doucette, Donna Danisco with Danisco Design. We have Christina Delangelo with Doran Whittier, Jeff Oxalata with Danisco Design, Jillian Gonzalez, Joe Scanlon, Dr. Josh Vidala, Miss Michelle Massa, and we have Vivian Lowe with Danisco Design. And Jared Hockman. We have Pete McGinn. And did I catch everyone? If there's anyone here on the screen that I didn't name, please speak up. Feel free.
We also have Rachel Donner and Mike Cox from Doran Whittier as well.
Oh, good. Thank you, Christina. Okay.
Welcome.
All right. Well, I guess that's everyone that's here right now. As people come in, we'll keep a tally here so we have an accurate attendance at today's meeting. And I did receive note from Ryan Melville. Ryan was unable to attend today. Okay, let's start off. We'll go right to our agenda. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'd like first to have a motion to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, which took place October 8th. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Joe. Motion made by Joe Scanlon. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Beth McGivern. All right. On those minutes, I'm going to run through the list. Mayor Betancourt, we'll take a vote on approving the minutes. That's the motion before us. So, Edward Betancourt?
Yes.
Okay. Joe Scanlon?
Yes.
Okay. I'm voting yes. Dr. Vidala?
Yes.
Okay. Pete McGinn?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle Massa?
Yes.
Ed Colbert?
Yes.
Thank you. Jill Gonzalez?
Yes.
Beth McGivern?
Yes.
And let's see. I think that's everyone that's here. Is there any a voting member that I didn't call? Jared Hockman.
Yes. Thank
Oh.
you, Beverly.
All right, thank you. And Jim Hafey. Okay. All right, moving on. I am going to actually turn the meeting. Thank you all for voting. I'm going to turn this over to Mike Burton to bring us into the next extremely interesting, very important item on our agenda today. This is going to be a real education for all of us. And I'm going to let Mike take it from here. Go right ahead, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Bev. Christina, can you make me the host? I'm going to share from my computer, if that's okay.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Sure.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, can people see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so what we're here to talk about today is there's two delivery types of construction that you can use in the state of Massachusetts. There's MGL Chapter 149, which is known as Design, Bid, Build. And then there's MGL Chapter 149A, which is also known as CM at Risk. So there's two different delivery styles that we can use to either hire a general contractor or a construction manager. And what we want to do here is we want to touch on each of the two different types, talk a little bit about some of the facts, some of the advantages, and some of the disadvantages. And so with that, I'm just going to jump right into it. Let's see if Okay, so as you're thinking about construction delivery methods, there's always project considerations, and certainly budget is always one of them. We're very budget conscious, and that's a huge factor in making these decisions, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. The design of the project. What is the design? Is it a simple new building, or is it a complex phase type of a project? So the design is a big factor when you're making this decision. Schedule is also a major consideration, and each of the options have their own sort of requirements and advantages and disadvantages. What's the project's risk assessment? And so for us here, I think that we're primarily looking at a potential repair project. There is a lack of swing space right now. And so how does that work get done? How do we minimize the impact to school operations and so forth? And then there's owner's expertise, which I'm sure the city of Peabody has done probably thousands of design, bid, build. CM at Risk is a fairly new, Chapter 149A is, relatively new. And so maybe there isn't experience there, but the good news is your project team, Danisco and Doran Whittier, is very familiar with it. So talking about design, bid, build. So what is that? Essentially, you're purchasing the building based on plans and specs. So it's a lump sum bid. You complete your design, you go out to the subcontractors and general contractors. And at that point, the price, okay? So CM at Risk, what's the difference is that you're hiring a professional firm who's going to come in earlier than design, bid, builds. So through our process, we're going to go through schematic design, design development, construction documents, and so forth. And the difference with CM at Risk is that you're hiring a builder to join your team. It's a very team-oriented, collaborative process. They're on board while you're still drawing. And the reason that's a big advantage is because we want their input on phasing, scheduling. They're looking at the drawings as they're being developed. They help estimate the project as we go through the multiple estimates that are required through the MSBA process. They're on board. They're part of the team, okay? Design, bid, build facts. The selection, again, is based on, it's the lowest bidder wins. It's rip and read, it's plans and specs. You put the plans out there, you open the envelopes, it goes to the lowest bidder for both subcontractors and general contractors. When the design is finished, that's when you go out and get your bids. So the way it works, the MSBA process is we have to make our deal with the MSBA, which is called the Project Funding Agreement, the PFA, which is shown here. The PFA is while you're halfway through design, but you're making your deal with the MSBA. That's what the grant will be based on. And one of the issues with design, bid, build is that we're gonna make our agreement with the MSBA, and then we're gonna complete the design, and then we're gonna know the final number. So it's a little bit backwards. And the way the MSBA looks at that is if, let's just say, and I'm making up numbers, let's just say there was a $10 million job and we went to the MSBA and our grant is based on 10 million. If bids come in at 12 million, then that 2 million over is 100% on the district. The grant never goes up after you finalize your project funding agreement. If, for example, that $10 million job turned out to be 8 million, the MSBA would then reduce the grant by 2 million. So that's how it works. I have a graphic that I'll show at the end to kind of elaborate on the timeline piece, but I'll keep going with this for now. But it is important to note that you won't know the number until far after the PFA. Very traditional Massachusetts project delivery method used all the time. Again, sealed bid, fixed price scenario. Your contract is based on a lump sum amount. And then it's sort of, I call it closed book. It's a little bit different. It's a lump sum. So for example, when it comes to general conditions and requirements, let's just say they have $1 million. We don't see what's in that. We don't see how that's broken down. That just gets prorated throughout the life of the job. So it's somewhat closed book. With CM at risk, we have the ability to select subs and construction managers based on qualifications and then cost. So for example, with CMs, if we go out at this method, we would go out to construction managers and we would ask them to submit qualifications. Qualifications come back, we help the school building committee go through them, determine which ones we like, which ones we don't, which are good fit and which are not. And then after you qualify those construction managers, then you ask for a price proposal. And this is where you're going to essentially negotiate the CM's fee and the general conditions. Again, the CM is ultimately providing pre-construction services. Okay, so they're on board while you're designing. And so therefore it does cost a little bit more because you're paying for these services during design. Okay, but again, they're part of the team. They're very helpful when it comes to creating our budget. And when the CM is on board prior to us going to the MSBA project funding agreement, we're going to have a lot more input on schedule, phasing, and logistics, all of which can add money to the project. And having them be involved and part of the team is really critical, especially on a complex project. The CM will also participate in subcontractor pre-qualification. There are certain subs that we think will be a good fit and others that wouldn't be. So we have the ability to pre-qualify, and there may be subs that, maybe there's a history with Peabody that they really like somebody or they really didn't. We have the opportunity to select the group that we want to go to. The other big advantage that I think is very applicable to this project is it allows us to issue an early release package, or ERP, if you will. And so what that means is if you have a fast track schedule and your design, let's just say it's finishing in October, but we want to be in there that summer because we know that, summer's the best time to access the schools. We have the option to do an early release package. So for example, let's say that we wanted to take a look at abatement or site work or utilities or limited demolition. The CM at risk allows us to do that, and it allows us to start work earlier while we're still completing the design. So that's a big advantage. The contract style here, as opposed to design bid build, which is lump sum, this is called the GMP, guaranteed maximum price, which essentially is the cost of the work plus general conditions and the negotiated construction manager fee. Again, the GMP is built with the assumptions, and they include allowances for phasing, logistics, all of that. And so having that input up front prior to going and making your deal with the MSBA, I think is a huge value. It's also open book construction, meaning that we get to see what we're paying for in terms of the construction manager's staff. So in a project that's very complex and phased, we want to make sure that, number one, the students, the staff, the abutters, the parents, everybody is safe and segregated from the construction in every way. And the way you do that is having good construction manager oversight and staff and safety. And so we get to see all of that when it comes to an accounting perspective, when they bill us every month for general conditions and requirements. Some of the advantages of design bid build, it's very familiar. As I said, I'm sure Dan Doucette and the city of Peabody have done thousands of these, so it's very familiar. It's a simple procurement process for the project team to manage. It's, finish your design and go out to bid. Lowest price proposed and accepted. And it's very simple in terms of accounting, as it's a lump sum. Some of the advantages of CM at risk, again, qualifications, we get to choose the players that we want in the pool. And again, the builder assists with budgeting, logistics, and constructability. The schematic design, which is what's used to develop the project funding agreement, has their involvement up front. They're going to work. Danisco will also provide an estimate. The construction manager would provide an estimate. We would reconcile those two bids. So we have two sets of teams, two estimates, getting us the right number. So when we make our deal with project funding, we don't want that number to go up, okay? And so having that input is hugely important. Again, fast track use of early release packages is a big advantage. CM joins the team during design. And again, it's a very team-oriented atmosphere. They're part of the group. We're all pulling the rope in the same direction. And because it's a team atmosphere, that really reduces the likelihood of claims and schedule extensions, which in a design bid build scenario, delays and claims are a much higher risk. And then CM assumes the risk for the project costs and schedule, all in that GMP that we're going to use to build the project funding agreement. Some of the disadvantages of design bid build: it's a linear process, and it may mean longer schedule durations. And so it's, you know, again, not knowing what your number is prior to the PFA does put risk on the owner's side. Construction costs aren't known until the bids are received, which is after the PFA. The designer, and we would help with this if we went this route, the designer ultimately has to develop the schedule and the phasing. And so if you're building a brand new building on a new site, it's very linear, it's very simple, that's an easy schedule. If you're in an occupied building and there's multiple complexities with mechanical systems and electrical and everything else, and it's a phased approach, that's a lot more complex. With design bid builds, the GC project management, safety, and field supervision is usually minimal. They're low bidder, and when you're low bidder, you're going to put just the bare minimum of personnel on site to oversee that construction. And so again, for inside and it's a phased project, that's a disadvantage. This design bid builds does increase the probability of disputes and claims. There's no input from any builder prior to going out to bid at the end of design. And the full costs aren't really realized until completion. Some of the disadvantages of CM at risk: it requires the OPM and the design team to be familiar with the GMP model, which we are. It's a two-step procurement process, which for the project team does take a lot of time, but that's okay because we have time because we're talking about this now. And then there are some additional costs. So with a general contractor in a design bid build, you're hiring them after you bid. Here, there's going to be services provided in advance while you're still designing. So there are some additional costs. And this is just sort of a summary of some of the points we just talked about. CM at risk allows for fast track scheduling. Design bid build is the lowest theoretical cost because you're not paying for those services up front. CM at risk, there's a lot more flexibility to deal with unforeseen conditions. And so as we build our guaranteed maximum price, just from our experience and the builder's experience, we're going to establish allowances for unforeseen conditions as we build that GMP. That's very flexible when you're in a multi-phase renovation project. Flexibility and schedule, absolutely, because as we build this GMP and schedule that we need for the project funding agreement, we're going to build that schedule to allow for some of these unforeseens. Design bid build, builders selected on cost only. CM at risk, we're selecting them on qualifications and cost. And then with design bid build, it's very traditional. People are used to it. It's a very simple procurement process, and it requires no state approval. So what that last point means is that CM at risk has a process in Massachusetts where you have to file a package of information with the OIG, okay? And so this this package goes in and you're essentially requesting permission to utilize Chapter 149A. This package takes time to develop. There's a lot of information that we will pull together with Danisco. That goes to the OIG, and they have up to 60 days to approve that process. So CM at Risk does require that, where design bid build does not. And I have a timeline that I'm going to share, but just to kind of wrap that up. So the conclusions are design bid build is best suited for less complicated or complex projects with a very straightforward design. Again, brand new building, open site, it's very linear. There's not a lot of work around. That's absolutely the model for that. CM at Risk, we believe, is best suited for more complicated and complex projects that are going to be phased and have lots of intricacies in terms of the logistics and schedule management challenges or anything else. And so that's the conclusion. I do want to share this timeline.
Mike, is it okay? This is Donna. Is it okay if I just
Please.
jump in?
Please.
Thanks. Just so that we're clear, just a couple of items. The design bid build process, as we all know, also goes through a pre-qualification process. So I do want to make sure that everyone understands that we do submit GCs do have to submit their qualifications. It's a selection process, but typically you don't get to interview them. It's what they submit. Typically, it's based on other relevant projects with the same similar project cost or construction cost. So you can't necessarily approve these bidders to bid or GCs to bid based on you like them or you don't like them, but there is a little bit of a pre-qualification process involved in design bid build. So if we have poor experience or there is a contractor that we feel is not qualified, we have an opportunity to disqualify them or not allow them to bid on the project. The other comment I just want to make is that each, whether it's design bid build or construction manager risk, each have a construction contingency. So if there's missed scope, and there will be, no one's perfect, but if our documents omit something, either the GC or the CM will have the ability to ask for more money for that change order. So I just want to make that clear that there will be change orders regardless if it's design bid build or CM. So we're not 100%, they say CM at risk, but it's not 100% at risk. So I just want to make that also clear. And then our most recent experience with Peabody is with the Higgins School. And we had an excellent relationship with Bacon Agostini. It was a great process. And I know we went through this discussion early and upfront, and the decision was to go with design bid build. It was as Mike pointed out, we were able to separate the project, even though it was on the same site as the existing school. We were able to put it on the fields. So there was little disruption to the staff and students and the operation of the existing building. And that really is what's key here, is that this is going to be a phased occupied school. So there is a lot more complexity, even though the dollar value is a lot less. This is a far more complicated project.
Yeah, and just one other point as it comes to change orders. The other thing with CM at risk is as we build that GMP, we can put allowances into the GMP. And the way it works with MSBA is in either method, when it comes to change orders on a new project, they will reimburse up to 1% for change orders, 2% on renovations. And once you go over that 1 or 2% respectively, it's 100% on the district. As we build the GMP, there's certain common things that come up and we can put allowances in there, and that gives you the opportunity to increase your reimbursement if we're using those allowances that are established in the GMP, as opposed to just the 1 or probably 2% cap that would happen during the design bid build process. So again, maximizing reimbursement is very important, and the CM at risk offers us that opportunity. Let me just show you a timeline real quick to sort of lay this out. Can everybody see that kind of colored Excel sheet?
Yep.
Very
Okay.
pretty. Are you an architect?
Yeah, yeah. So I went and put two different models together to kind of show you how does this look in terms of time. Now there's a couple of qualifications that I'm going to make right now for anybody watching this. First of all is the construction, which is shown at the very end. We've made a big assumption here. We don't know what the construction duration is at this point, okay? But what I'm trying to illustrate here is when it's likely to start. What that duration is going to be, we don't know at this stage of design. We're at the very beginning, so I've made an assumption on a duration, and I just want to make perfectly clear that we are not saying that this is a 16-month construction project, but really what I'm trying to illustrate is when it would start. So walking through this is the construction manager at risk model. Right now we are in feasibility study, which is the top bar. The next is schematic design. Under that, in sort of orange with a star at the end of it, that is when we are going for City of Peabody approvals. And then at the end of that is when we reach our agreement with the project funding with the MSBA. So this is where we make our deal in roughly January, February of 22. So what I'm illustrating here is that we would, if we went this route, we would hire the construction manager during schematic design, probably 1/3 or midway point. And we want them on board to, again, provide input on phasing, scheduling, logistics. And then also at the end of schematic design, they provide an estimate, which ultimately is what's going to turn into our PFA. So they're on board prior to the PFA. Continuing, so we get our PFA, we're going to continue design development and construction documents. And, you know, under this scenario, what I'm showing is there's an opportunity there where our design on this model won't be complete until August of 22. And so we want to start work earlier than that, because again, if the school is there and it's vacant and there's an opportunity to do some work, we want to take that using an early release package. So I'm showing an early release package being issued. I'm showing some sort of early enabling work, if you will, whether it's site work, demolition, abatement, what have you. That could take place while the design completes. And then when that enabling or first phase is complete, then you roll into the rest of the construction. So essentially, it allows us to start June 22. In the design bid build model, again, we won't know our price until the very end. So if our design is going to be complete, this model I'm showing January of 23, then we go out to bid, then we're not starting until June of 23. And when we go out to bid here, this is almost a year after we've made our deal with the MSBA. And so it's all about how much you know when you go to that PFA. And so I know this is sort of a lot to throw at you. The good news is there's no, we don't have to decide on this today. What we're looking to do is, first of all, get this information out, let the group sort of ask questions, marinate on it, think more about this. What I can say is that if it's something that we're entertaining, there's really no skin off the committee's back if you allow us to start the process with the OIG in terms of filling out the paperwork and starting the submission and waiting the 60 days. We have time to make the final decision. We don't have to go that route. So we would recommend, well, let me go through let me just pause there and start with questions, and then I'll sort of wrap it up after the committee has a chance to discuss.
Okay. Committee members, anyone with questions, please feel free to ask them now. I know this is a lot to take in because it's two different methods, and It really is a lot of information, but I do want to compliment Torn Whittier. This is a wonderful presentation, and you've given a lot of the understanding behind the two methods. And I want to tell you, I appreciate it. And I also want to say to my fellow committee members, those of us who worked on the Higgins project went through this in a similar process, trying to understand this, but and then to make the ultimate decision. The ultimate decision will rest with the building committee, but thankfully, as Mike said, we don't have to make a decision today. This is really an educational presentation for all of you, and don't feel that, if you have a question later on, please bring it up, because we know it is confusing. So, feel free to bring something up now, but also don't hesitate to bring it up later. Are there any questions? Would anybody like to bring anything forward at the moment?
Yeah, Bev?
Yes, Jared, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mike, thank you for that presentation. It is extremely helpful, and there is a lot to digest. Can you give us an update, or is there an update on where we are in the feasibility phase in terms of what we're looking at as a project? Because I think that matters, at least based upon the
Absolutely.
information we're giving.
Well, actually, can I just interject there? I know we are going to get more information on where we stand with the feasibility study after this. So if we can keep any of that discussion kind of here with the delivery methods, and then we will go into another
Yeah,
agenda about that.
That's right. That is our next topic. So yes,
Yeah.
Jared, we're going to give you a full update as to where we are.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm good for now.
Bev, it's Pete McGinn.
Go ahead, Pete.
Thank you. Mike, yeah, thanks. Great presentation. How involved is the approval or pre-approval process, I guess, with the OIG office for CM at risk? Is that a cumbersome thing, or is that something that would make just sense to do?
Yeah,
because it's not too onerous?
Well, Christine, I don't know if you want to address that. There is a lot of
Sure.
information. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lot of information that we do need to gather along with Danisco and the owner to present to the OIG's office. I've dealt with it now for the last 4 years, and I've never had a problem submitting that information and getting approval. Generally, it takes a couple of weeks, but we have a pretty great relationship with the OIG's office, in particular the woman that we deal with there. So it's just a lot of work on our end, but again, it's a pretty straightforward process, and I've never had an issue with submitting anything to the OIG's office.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a lift, but that's why we're here. That's why you hired us. That's what we do. So there is some work involved. We're happy to do that, and if that's a path that the committee feels comfortable, I personally think that there's a lot of advantages in doing the CM at risk for this particular project, given considerations of what we believe the scope is likely to be, as well as some of the other factors like lack of swing space and so forth. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
And Peter, this is Dawn. I just want to reiterate, applying for and getting approval to go with the CM method or procurement process does not mean that we have to do it. It just gives us the flexibility to be able to pick which one we want to go with. So it
right.
just provides an opportunity as we finish vetting out the scope and understanding the complexity and how best we can do this with the least impact to the staff and students.
And based upon the materials that need to be gathered and the paperwork, it sounds like it would make sense to at least start that process where we're not bound by
Correct.
applying for that, but at least to get it out of the way. If we want it, we have it. during this time with COVID, there are a lot of different delays happening with just any type of governmental action,
Mhm.
never mind governmental, any action. So it does seem to make sense. And throughout this process, even when we first started, we've always said we want this to be an aggressive timeline whenever we could. We've done everything possible to do as much, I guess, as much at the same time as we possibly could, just to shorten timelines. And if you look back, really before Dorn Whittier and Danisco came on board, those of you involved with this know that we would do many things instead of one at a time. We would do it as soon as we could, and then everything was ready when we needed to move on.
Yeah, and just as it relates to the timeline, as we all know, escalation goes up every year, right?
Yeah.
And so we've been seeing construction costs rising in the 3 to 5% range. It's, this year in particular may be a little bit different given COVID and everything else, but let's just assume we're looking at construction cost escalation of 3 to 5%. If you can start a year earlier, you're saving 3 to 5% of the direct contract work. And so having the ability to do that with CM at risk, we do think is an advantage to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Just one other thing I wanted to add on the application process with the OIG's office is that we can definitely start the process now, but ultimately we will need to have a certificate of approval from legal counsel certifying that the SBC did approve to proceed with the CM at risk process. And so ultimately that is something that we will need in order to fully submit that documentation to the OIG's office for consideration and approval.
Okay. And would that be a vote on the actual, the final decision of this committee as far as the CM at risk versus design bid build? Can that vote take place at our next meeting or at a future meeting? Does it have to be? I know you have something we have to submit this month. Preliminary things have to go into MSBA in order to be on that January meeting. Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, so we would need this SBC approval. And so, yes, we can do that obviously at a future SBC meeting, but that we can, like Mike said, we can definitely start the process now with filling out the information as much as we can. But ultimately, we do need to provide information as whether or not this SBC approves that process.
Okay.
Bev, I think I'm sorry, this is Donna. I think it's two things. This doesn't go to, well, MSBA is copied on it, but it goes to the IG's office.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not through MSBA. This is a state process that,
Okay.
and MSBA doesn't really care at this stage. They just want to know which way we're going by the time we submit our schematic design.
Yeah, ultimately, we'll submit to the MSBA the paperwork that states that we were approved through the Office of Inspector General's office to proceed.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it's an integrated process or a bit of a parallel process. So
Parallel, yep.
Yeah, absolutely parallel. The only other thing I just want to jump back on is the schedule and the opportunities for advancing the schedule using a CM. It really depends on the project. And I just caution us here for this project because of the different type of scope that we'll be doing for this project. Typically, advantages would be foundations and steel and erection. All of that takes time. Typically, we can have that portion of the project in advance of the full project going out to bid, et cetera. This is a unique situation where we don't believe we'll be doing too much of that, if any at all. So I think while Mike's schedule was showing how much more advantageous it is to get in front of the construction using a CM, we still support CM in this project, but I just want to make sure that some of it may not be as applicable with this project, just because of the scope of work. Mike, I don't know if you want to jump in.
No, that's absolutely right. I think given what we think this project may be at this point, a lot of those typical things that you do exercise an early release package on are going to be a little bit more complicated here. If, for example, this is going to be basically a repair project, the meat of this project is going to be mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and plumbing. So it's the guts, it's the magic in the walls, if you will. And so unfortunately, those take the longest in design. And so you're not going to have that really right up until the very end. What you can take advantage of is, again, anything outside, site work, utilities, abatement. We could do an early release window package. We could do an early release elevator package. There's several opportunities that we have that exist. We don't know what they are sitting here today because we haven't defined the scope, but I like having options, and this provides options.
If I could weigh in, the scope of this, the scope of this project does offer some opportunities in things like pre-purchase. If we can decide, for instance, on, let's just say we go with some sort of univent system. If we know what the univent is, we could pre-purchase that, and then all the design entails is how to pipe into each one of them or how to provide electrical service. And Mike just touched on a couple I would have touched on, which are elevators and windows. We certainly know about windows from the Burke and the McCarthy, and we've always said that we're going to try to do something similar to those two other buildings because they were of similar design. So to say that there aren't opportunities, I think, given the scope, is not entirely accurate. The other thing that concerns us lately is supply chain. And if some things, with the help of the CM and certain subs, we may be able to do pre-purchasing so that everything is on track without any delay in the supply chain.
So Dan, you're
Thank you,
telling us
Dan.
we can buy things on sale, possibly.
Well, the earlier you buy it, it tends to be lower in price too.
Here we go.
Building
When are the
19,
windows
building
on
19.
sale? It's the January sale, Dan.
That's right.
Yeah, I think Dan, we're not, and we support what you're saying. I think typically though, we just have to be cautious in how we procure some of these. We do have filed sub bids that we are going to have to include, windows, mechanical systems, all of that. So, and our drawings do need to be at a level, especially for windows, not so much procuring mechanical unifence if that's the decision, but our drawings need to be able to be ironclad so that we can obviously get the right scope, whether it's CM or it's also going to be a file sub-bidder. And we all know that fun process. So again, Danisco supports, if it matters, given the complexity of this project, to go with the CM, especially. It's going to be very challenging with it being fully occupied, and having a CM on board will allow us the flexibility to do the right thing at the right time. So I think, just so everyone understands, Danisco is not partial to one or the other. We did DBB, and we think that was the right decision for Higgins. And we do support a CM delivery method for this project.
And just so everyone knows, Agostini Bacon sits on both sides of the CM at risk and design bid build. So certainly they could be a player for this project. They did the Higgins.
Very good. Did anyone else want to make a comment or ask a question? I'll throw another question out there. Mike, when Dorn Whittier did a presentation, you worked on, basically it was 2 elementary schools, and to many of the members on the Building Committee, the projects were kind of similar in our minds, similar to the Welch. And
Yep.
it was a phased project. Did you use a CM at risk on that project? Do you remember?
We did use a CM at risk, and ironically, it was Agostini Bacon.
Oh my God, that's perfect. Because I know that the complications with the Welch project are really very, they're very interesting. And at first glance, it sounds like a very simple thing, but hearing Donna and hearing you, Mike, the phasing is very complicated. And I know on our end, the phasing actually is something that we were very interested in because of the lack of swing space and trying to get that school fixed as soon as possible. Because, one other thing is we don't know how long the current univents will last. So Dan find the univents, buy one, get one free, because we're nervous. But it does sound like very similar to what you had done in the past. Thank you.
I just wanted to
say something, please?
I just wanted to add also when it comes to CM at risk, I know Mike had talked about this on the previous slides, which we had sent out to the full committee so that you have that as well. But it's a two-step process. And I know Donna had said in design bid build, you still do a pre-qualification, which is also what we will do with CM at risk. But you also go through an interview process where you accept their proposals and their price proposals. Those are the two different proposals you receive. And so you're able to interview with each firm that you then end up pre-qualifying. And ultimately you can review based off of previous experiences, just like what you're saying, Bev and Dan and Donna, on being a repair project, we would want to find a CM that would have similar experiences on doing projects like that, a fully occupied building, phasing, all of those logistics that we're studying in this particular project that are our challenges and our risks that we've already assessed. It's something that adds a little bit more value as far as the interview process for CM at risk.
Thanks, Christina. That's good insight. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything on this? Any questions? And as I said, the more you think about it, the more you have a chance to look at the materials. You may come up with some additional questions, and then just email them or email them in so that we will be able to compile them all together, because you may have a common question that someone else may be asking the same thing, or you may have something that would make a lot of sense to people, but no one had thought of it at the time.
Yeah, and so I did, spirit of full disclosure, I did tweak this PowerPoint as early as this morning. So the one that we sent out is slightly different than what we went through. So what we will do is share this again.
Thank you. Yes, because there is a change. I've got a page that I didn't print.
That's right. So it is slightly different. I added a couple of things. Sorry, but so we will share that. What I would say is, yes, this should be an agenda topic for next SBC meeting.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if it's okay with the committee, we will go ahead and begin to gather data while the committee considers this. And then so at the next meeting, as Christina said, part of that submission package does include certification from the district. And so that would be a vote at the next SBC.
Okay. And I'm going to throw this out there. If between this meeting and the one where we need to take that final vote, if need be, the school building committee can have a brief one-item meeting just to discuss the questions that may be remaining before you need to make that vote. And as I said, this presentation was excellent. If we need to see it again, I'm fine with doing that if you folks would like to do that, because it is a big decision. It is confusing, and there's a lot at stake. So we want to make sure that you all feel confident so that when we do take that vote, and if MSBA says, well, were you educated and up to date and understanding of it, we can all say yes. So be prepared for that. This is the time where we will start moving into a few more occasional meetings in addition to our monthly standard meeting, just so everyone knows that.
Bev?
Yes,
Steve? Just to follow up to Mike's comment. So it sounds like Dora and Whittier can proceed on gathering information kind of informally. You don't need a motion out of the committee today to advance that. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
yeah.
Thank
Mhm. Okay, and actually, I think that at this point, it does lead into the next agenda item, Mike, if you'd like, and Donna specifically about the, you know, the feasibility study progress, you know, I guess all those calendars you folks are running and where you are on all those items. So go right ahead.
Thank you. I think Vivian or Jeff, Vivian, want to just share our presentation, just give everyone an update. I
Yeah,
don't-
Christina, were you sharing? Were there some items after the design portion, Christina or Mike?
Sorry, I was on mute. I can go ahead and share it, or you can. It's up to you, whichever one you're more comfortable with.
If you have it pulled up, that would be great.
Okay, just give me 1 second here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I threw a curveball because there was a schedule update, but if no one's has any objection, we can do the schedule update.
Oh, I'm
after.
sorry. Go ahead. If you want to do the schedule first, sure. Mike kind of touched on it a little bit, but
I don't know. I think either way we could do it. Mike, what would you like to do?
go
I'm
for
going
it.
to let Christina pull up the next agenda right here. There we go.
Yeah, it was just it was a brief schedule update that we wanted
Right.
to do that shows just our typical schedule that we've already shared with you at every meeting, and that was also part of the presentation. So I don't think has anything changed on here, Mike, since our last meeting.
Hold on. So I do think what did change in module 4 was in some working group discussions that we've had with Danisco. I think originally we had the completion of schematic design a month or two earlier. Based on where we think we're going, we think it's probably too aggressive, and we're trying to set expectations now. And so schematic design, right now we have that going out to the October board meeting. And I think previously we had that at the August board meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's line 44.
Yep.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions regarding the schedule update?
I actually do have one. On line 27 that you need a vote of the building committee, but also the school committee. And the school committee does have a meeting on Tuesday. If need be, school committee can take that vote.
Bev, actually, I think that might be a typo. We're not submitting we don't need the SBC vote on November 16th if we're submitting to MSBA on 12/18.
Okay.
Mike, is that a typo, do you think?
Yeah, that might be a carryover or something. You're absolutely right. We do not need that for the
Good.
PDP.
Okay.
Let
Good,
me
'cause
correct.
you know,
let me
we've got to hear that for today and get it
Yeah,
into.
no. It's not even, yeah. I think that's supposed to be 12/16, not 11/16.
Oh, okay.
Mike, right? I think.
Yeah, let me,
Okay.
yeah, let me, when I resend the PowerPoint, let me tweak this and I will send that as part of the update.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can weigh in on line 26, it shows a community meeting. I presume we're not going to have a community meeting at this point now.
No,
But-
we need, go ahead.
But looking at line 32, I'm wondering if that's still could be a community meeting one, at least with some ideas of what's going to happen around the site, particularly for the neighborhood, and second, things that would happen in the building that we can predict for the benefit of students as parents and staff.
Mhm. I think
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, actually, Dan, thanks for bringing that up. It looks like a lot of the PDP needs to move a month in all of those. And it's totally up to the city and this building committee what they feel is an appropriate time to reach out to the community. Once we submit our PDP to MSBA, it's quote unquote public. We do like to, prior to submitting the PDP, do some form of community outreach just so people do see what it is that we're considering, how the project is advancing, just letting them know these are the options that we're going to continue to explore and obtain any input from them. So even though we're saying community meeting number 1, which is going to occur, it's scheduled for November 19th. I think that should really be, towards the vote, which would be before the December 18th. So it looks like some of those dates are just off by a month since we pushed back the submittal. But I still think we probably want to have a community meeting so people know what it is that we're going to be recommending to MSBA to further consider. But it's totally at the city's discretion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's helpful as part of the submission. It does, you can include any information as far as community outreach. And so it does show us communicating with the community from the beginning of the project. So that's something that we could discuss with our executive working group in the next week or so on how we'd like to set up our community meeting based off of what we know today and
Yep.
how we do that outreach as well.
That's definitely doable on our end. That would work. And the first couple of weeks of December are probably a really nice time to have that kind of community outreach. And we can do it in all different ways too.
Okay. Yeah. So why don't we schedule something with our executive working group where we can talk about that, Bev, and our
Okay.
team, and then we
Sure.
can talk about how we're going to then also broadcast the information out to the community as well.
Right. That will be really a good thing to do. It'll be enjoyable.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions that anyone has on the calendar? Okay. I think we can move on to the next agenda item. This is really fun. They're drawings. This is the part that I really like.
Me too. Christina, there's one kind of black box over, I'm not sure what it is. A portion of the slide.
Now it popped around.
Worst case, I don't know if I'm the only one seeing that. No, okay.
Nope,
that should be good enough.
Here we go. Yay,
So this should be a good segue. What we want to do next is update you on where we are in making kind of the final picture of the project more clear, and then once that final picture is clear, as we've been talking about, we can figure out how to chop up all the pieces and put it back together again. So good morning, everyone. This is basically an update on where we are in the study based on the working group meetings we've had over the past few weeks. And we'll review some of the pricing options that are currently being estimated, the HVAC selection process, and then some updates on the educational components of the building design. Next, please. Great. One of the major components of the feasibility study is the evaluation of the high-level design concepts for the project. And these concepts generally fall into 4 categories, 3 of which are shown here: repairs, renovations, and then renovations additions. Not shown here would be a new building, and at this stage in the project, it's pretty straightforward to estimate the scope and the price of a new building itself. It would just be based on the final ed program and then priced on a dollar per square foot basis. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see a graphic representation of the project scope that we discussed at the last SBC meeting. This would be for the repairs option, which we know will include all new windows, a new HVAC system, and then any other improvements we need to make to the building by code. Some new fire alarm, sprinkler system, and then any upgrades to the toilet rooms needed to meet MAB standards. And then in this range between repairs and new construction is where the greatest quantity of iterations of the project exists. And the preliminary evaluation of these alternatives involves putting all of these at a high level, these options on the table with a price associated with each. And then once all the concepts are on the table, a number of criteria are used in the vetting process, eventually which will end up with our preferred schematic, which will be what's developed during schematic design. And these will be vetted based on how each option meets the educational program, how it meets the project budget, and in the case of this project, how we can phase it and what swing space we have available, if any. So the center diagram shows renovations, and this could have varying levels of scope that would be additive to the repair scope. And some examples of this would be minor interior reconfigurations, and then one of the other options here is potential replacement of the kitchen equipment. The diagram on the right shows addition renovations, and this again would be additive to the renovations and repairs scope, and would involve adding whole new pieces to the building. And we're evaluating modest additions. One would be an addition of the bay onto the right-hand side of the building. One would be a modest addition in the core of the building, and then potentially one on the front. And these high-level concepts are currently being priced by the design team, and we'll evaluate this with the working group. And then once we have the final picture, evaluation of the delivery method based on our conversation earlier can occur in tandem with the scoping concepts. Next, please. And a significant portion of the project cost will be the new HVAC system. So we're evaluating 8 different system types with the facilities working group and the executive working group. And this is to ensure that we select the most appropriate system type for the project. Some of the evaluation criteria are listed here, and they're both financial, first cost, operating cost, and technical also. Next, please. So we're also in the process of finalizing the educational program. And as part of that process, we've developed an understanding of how the program is delivered in the existing building. And we've been working with the superintendent and principal to identify the priorities and areas of highest need and what improvements we can make as part of the project to best suit the program. Next, please. Another aspect of the design we've been reviewing is student storage. The students currently store their coats and backpacks, personal belongings in large communal closets inside the classrooms, and we're evaluating those against their needs and if there are any options for improvements, one of which could be cubbies in the individual classrooms shown here. Next, please. And one of the other options we've discussed that might be particularly suited to the upper grades would be lockers in the corridors as shown here. And next. And another design concept that we've used in the past would be a project area similar to what's shown here. This would be lockers outside the classrooms with small spaces for small group instruction. This would be applicable to probably an addition renovation project, whereas the previous two would be applicable to either repairs or renovations. This particular model was used at the Brown School. Next, please. So as part of a renovation or addition renovation option, we've been looking into how the ed program could be better accommodated within the existing walls of the building, creating different types of spaces for different types of instruction inside the existing classrooms. So we've started having those initial conversations with the superintendent and the principal, and we'll continue to develop that in tandem of the classroom unit and the overall building at the same time. Next. There are also several classrooms in the building that have been converted to shared instructional spaces. The teachers and staff are really maximizing the space that they have. And we're reviewing how those could be better configured to facilitate that type of shared instruction. Next. I don't have any colorful timelines, but I'll try for next time. I'd like to say to Vivian and Donna, if you have anything, any additional points of discussion you'd like to add at this point, please. Or if there are any design related questions, we can do them now. People can think about it and we can do them at the end as well.
So one of the things that we've asked our cost estimator to do is to help us identify components within the renovations and addition renovation options, so that when we look at the whole project, it may not be purely a reno. The whole building may not be renovated, but there might be pieces that we could grab from the other options that we're having priced. So the idea is that we're putting together a shopping list of sorts, right? So that we can make sure we accommodate, as Jeff said, the educational program as best we can within the building walls, and where we can, we'll, as we're doing renovations for code requirements, we would take advantage of those areas to actually provide flexible spaces for the ed program.
Does anyone have questions about anything that you've just seen in this? I have to say, like I mentioned earlier, Jeff, I like pictures, and it was nice to see these drawings and you know, the suggestions to see which way you and Vivian and Donna and the team are heading with some of the incorporation of what you're hearing from Dr. Vidala and from Ms. Massa. What do the rest of you think? Chime in. Okay. And then I know we're going to get into the scheduling too. That'll answer Jared's question in a minute. Go ahead, Pete.
Just a quick question to Jeff on the HVAC system selection. How deep are you into the evaluation of the various systems?
I probably have 30 different criteria listed for each system. So we've started a matrix that we reviewed with the facilities and an executive working group, and it's really detailed. It really gets into all the different aspects of each system. So if we could go back to the HVAC slide real quick.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, I know Jim Hafey has been very involved in this, and Dan Doucette brought up a really good point when they were discussing the heating ventilation systems of utilizing the services of the acoustical engineer that the team has, just because a consideration is the noise level in a classroom. So those types of things are being looked at. Go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Right, no, not at all. So some of the things we're looking at, these 5 options are represented here, but for instance, unit ventilators actually has 3 sub-options, and induction units has 2. So some of the main criteria we're looking at is whether or not it can run in an all-electric building, what types of components are going in the space, whether you have a unit that sits at the classroom window wall on the ground, or you have a fan coil unit above the ceiling, or what have you. And then also a large component of it is what goes on the roof. If there's a condenser for every classroom, if there's a chiller that can be centrally located, that'll determine what type of structural upgrades might need to be done to the roof that will need to be incorporated into the bottom line cost of each system. So if there's, we probably don't want to be making modifications to the roof of every single classroom if we can concentrate in one area and get the most bang for a buck. So it's the components inside the spaces, the components outside of the spaces, the types of fresh air delivery and filter media have also become some pretty important points over the past 10 months or so. And then also controls and controllability of each space. And like Bev said, the noise as well. Some systems are almost silent, some are not. We'll take a look at that as well. We're also, from an operations standpoint, taking a look at how long each system is expected to last, and what type of maintenance needs to be done on a regular basis, and how frequently. That'll be a large part of facilities will have a lot of input in that as well. We're also looking at yes, first cost, operating cost, and then any additional MSBA incentives that could potentially be offered. So there's a large range of criteria on the table, and once our estimating of that is completed, we'll review that with the facilities working group.
Jeff, if I could add in something sort of from the last meeting, but also to go into the matrix. One other thing to consider, and we didn't really talk about it, is control systems, and to add that to the mix of cost considerations for each of the different systems. Whether there can be individual classroom controls, whether it's a central control system, that kind of thing, to go over with your HVAC engineer, because controls is always an interesting little long-term thing, not only for staff to learn, but also just to keep up with making sure that one side of the building gets warm, another side of the building gets cold, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the efficiency.
Yep.
Yeah, very important.
Jeff, just to follow on, is there any thought to, or maybe right up front, if there's any viability for it all given to geothermal?
That's a complicated question. Obviously, a major component in geothermal is first cost, and then in the site in particular, where to locate the wells.
This is the girl. This is the Maserati.
The wells in this site would almost need to be located.
So what was the story with that?
In the park, on the park side. So we haven't gone down that route just because we think the first cost is going to be prohibitive. We could continue to investigate that further. If you look on the slide, some of the systems have an asterisk next to them, and those are the systems that actually could utilize a geothermal well field to keep the building all electric. So it has been a point of discussion, but there are significant challenges as geothermal relates to this project. There are school projects currently being built that you'll hear that they're all electric buildings. But you're right, the route that they're taking to remain all electric is geothermal.
Well, yeah, just let me, Jeff, thanks.
Sure.
Danisco's just completed 2 all-electric buildings. One is utilizing geothermal wells, and we really are not considering it for this project, just given the scope and complexity of this project and the cost of the project, understanding other city needs and projects coming down the line. Actually, Christina and Mike Burton were on this project that we were just wrapping up, which it was 80 wells for a school project, school size of 110,000 square feet. And it was like a $2 million ad or $1.8 million ad just for the thermal wells. Seeing that you have all electric, we're looking at other opportunities such as the VRF, which is also, we've also just completed another project that utilized all VRF for an all electric building. So I think just for transparency, we're not pursuing geothermal for this project, just given the scope.
Thank you.
The cost is just, if we were converting the building, that would be, a really dedicated project. But with so many other things that need to be taken care of at the Welch, it really is unfortunate, but maybe down the road.
But I think we still feel confident that we can still provide you with an all-electric building. You currently have one now, right? So
Yep.
It's still achieving what you need to, or what you would like to achieve to be off of fossil fuel and all of that. So geothermal is just one way of approaching an all-electric building, and we believe we have options to do that utilizing other systems. So we'll still be meeting your goals in a cost-effective manner.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to the first cost and then the operating cost that we're working on wrapping those up in that matrix for review.
So would that same first cost issue exist for solar being a component of the electricity source?
Typically we don't factor that in initially into the cost of the system. The solar could be used to, it's basically where you get the electricity from, not the type of system, not the guts of the system that are installed within the building. As part of most of our projects, we do reserve space inside the building for all the for a PV system controller and all of the panels that would go along with that. And in most of our projects, we do run some additional empty conduit from the electric room up to the roof to accommodate PV arrays. But I don't think that would be, that'll be a factor in the operating cost.
Yeah, Jeff, if I could just jump in.
Yeah,
I think, I'm not sure if if you're pointing to both with the solar canopies and or the geothermals to try to get to a net zero building. Is that sort of where you're going with that?
Not necessarily net zero, but as efficient as possible.
Right. So absolutely. So Peter, I think, when we look at each project has, I guess, different criteria, and we recognize this one is budget. But with that said, our goal is to typically get the electric needs and use down to a EUI as low as possible. And that's going to be one of the, so that typically if you can get the EUI down to somewhere around 28, 25%, that will, they say it's sort of net zero ready. And then you can bring in your solar or other opportunities to get it to net zero. With this project, again, though, we are looking at a limited budget, limited funds, and limited scope. So we're looking at unit ventilators, which probably are not the most energy efficient. And we'll be weighing all of those options as we go down the road. We also do typically have our solar design firm, that's one of our consultants, that will also look at the building and see where is the best place to locate equipment so that it provides the maximum opportunity to put solar panels on the roof. So we can, once we determine what system we're using, we can have them take a look to see how the city can then, after the project's done, come in and put solar panels in.
Thank you.
And I have a 5th grade science project in my attic about a windmill at the adjacent golf course with all the details, if you'd like to throw that one in the mix too. Still good information. And it shows you how long kids at the Welch have been waiting to fix that building. Oh, thanks to Mrs. McGivern for her guidance on those projects.
No, it's awesome. And it's awesome to get these kids excited about it and learn about it. It just, we really enjoy that aspect of it. So, you know, Michelle, once we're in a place, we love to virtually or not even chat with the kids and get them excited once we understand what the scope is.
That will be fun. Okay. And as far as the next item, it is the budget update. And I know we did have a question on the feasibility study schedule. So if you can work that into this next agenda item, that would be great. Thanks.
I'm sorry, what was the question on the feasibility study question?
I think it was one, Jared Hockman had brought that up. I think it was just to see where we stood schedule-wise. I know, I know we are coming up on a submission, so that may be. Oh, Jared, if you could ask the question you had wanted about the schedule for the feasibility.
Yeah, no, I was just concerned. Thank you, Beverly. With where we are in terms of the feasibility process in relation to whether we're going to go CM or design and build or whatever those terms are, and if we had any update on that, so that we could, perhaps make a more educated decision when that vote comes in next month.
Oh, okay. All right. And so was your question answered though?
Yeah, no, I think that the update that we got gets me in a better place.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh,
We'll send out an updated slide, like Mike said, with our updated schedule. So that way it reflects the information we were talking about for December, potentially that community meeting, as well as our MSBA submission for PDP. And then we'll send that out to everyone.
Very good. Okay. Christina, are you going to do this next one on the budget update? Is that you or Mike?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Mike Cox. This is just our monthly budget update summary that we wanted to just update you on. It just talk about the invoices we've received to date, and you can see this is a snapshot of our dashboard that is also provided to you in your meeting update information. So Mike, you just want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, thank you, Christina. So yeah, pretty simple. We've had 6 Doran Whittier invoices processed to date, totaling $63,850. ISCO has had their first invoice processed last month for $33,000. We are in the feasibility phase, so all of these are under that category. I mean, there's really not much to update. We just wanted to show you where the budget stands today, committed, and what's been expended.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that we're sharing with you on a monthly basis where we stand within the feasibility budget.
Very good.
On a related topic, Mike Cox asked me about Danisco Design Amendment number 1. I believe it sits at the school department because it has a component of pro-pay and a few other things. I have no objection to it, but I'm really leaving all of that up to the school department to do. Could Joe or Dr. Vidala have any recollection of that being over there?
Let's see, is Joe still on?
Yeah, I mean, it's something, just listening to it, Dan, it's something I can assist in. Obviously, neither Josh or I have any institutional memory. We weren't here when the other schools were being done. But if it's a 30B type purchase,
No. This is related specifically to their engagement here for the Welch.
We sent over to you our amendment number 1 for Danisco Design, and so we were just waiting on approval of that amendment. So if you could just provide us with the status update if anyone knows about it.
Okay.
Does it require the mayor's signature?
It requires the owner's signature, that's correct, yes.
Okay, well,
Then we will follow through and get that.
Yeah,
okay.
If it's easier, maybe we can resend it just so it's at the top of the pile.
That might be good. If you could resend it to, on your side, Joe, if you could take that and then, let's see, how can we, what would be best?
yeah, I'll take a look at it. I apologize. I thought the conversation was going in a different direction. If you send it to Josh and I, we can figure it out. Yes.
Okay.
And would you like us to copy Marjorie and anyone else on that?
Marge is always helpful. If you copy her, please.
Okay, no problem. So we'll resend that over and we'll make sure we copy all the appropriate people on it.
Okay, good. And then it needs to go to the mayor for his signature.
That's correct.
Okay. And on anything to the mayor, always copy Darrell Ann McCarthy and
Daryl. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, are there any other questions on the budget? Okay, and we'll go, any other topics? Anybody have anything else? All right. We're going to dispense with public comment today, but if any members of the public are watching this and would like to have questions answered, just submit an email, send it into my attention at bdone@pb.k12.ma.us. All right. And then our next meeting will be December 3rd at 9:30. All right. And keep in mind, we might have a brief, what should we call it? An educational summit on cement risk versus design bid build. If folks need that, don't hesitate. Please let me know because we understand it and it'll be good to really learn this system. I need the class. All right. Is there anything else?
Yeah, just Beverly, one last question. I know that we're looking for a vote on the design bid build or CM on the December meeting. Are you expecting
Yes.
any other votes that we're going to require at that meeting?
That will probably be the only one, although if the, well, we don't need a vote to submit the request to the IG's office. Is that correct, Mike and Christina? We wouldn't need a vote on that. It's just a vote on our final vote on CM at risk or.
That's correct. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So that, yeah, it is an important meeting and I will make that known in the emails. But as far as that, I think that is the only vote that we require at this time. I do know we will need to have another vote at the school committee and city council, but that's a couple of months down the road. That's when we have more definitive information coming back to us also. I think it's if I'm not correct, please make sure you correct me, but I think it's after the MSBA gives us their decision in the spring. Would that be a good characterization of the next vote after this one, Christina?
Yes, but I think we're going to have another schedule meeting between ourselves and Danisco following up on this. So when we do send our schedule update, we'll make sure we outline those important factors for you as well.
Right, yeah. Okay. All right, is there anyone else with any questions? Okay, so our next meeting will be December 3rd, pending, we may have a quick meeting in between now and then. But other than that, I do hope, if we don't get to speak before Thanksgiving, I hope you all have a nice Thanksgiving and stay safe and healthy. And you'll be hearing from us very shortly. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Jared Hockman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe Scanlon. All right. And I think, is there any objection to that, or is it unanimous that we all approve?
All approved.
Okay, I see smiles across the board here, so I guess it's approved. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon, and keep track of everything. If you have questions, just ask them.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Take care.